Hey everyone, CZ Fangirl here, and this is my Optic Ready Shadow 2, which I have converted into a single action only Shadow 2. And I installed this single action only trigger, which is meant for the TSO. And it's a part I picked up from ipsicstore.com. They have probably about 50 permutations of this trigger. Seriously, they have, I think, 5 different colors, and then they have probably 4 or 5 different models of the trigger, and then they have serrated fronts on them or non-serrated. I chose the back set, a non-serrated trigger for my gun, but honestly they have so many different types of triggers, so definitely go check them out. So I'm going to send a shout out to the subscribers that weighed in on the things that should be tested when you convert your Shadow 2 into a single action only. One of the suggestions was that I should actually bump test it, which I did do, which I wasn't aware of. The other things that you should test is the functioning of the trigger with the safety on, and then the functioning of the trigger with the hammer down to see if it falls. Now I did do those, which are not shown in the video, but here's a funny story. So I'm really very new to single action only triggers. I've never owned a real single action only firearm. I had a 1911 for a very short period of time, which was a 22, and I never used it really. So I never really got used to the whole functionings of the single action only trigger. So when I first did this trigger job on the Shadow 2 with this single action only trigger, I installed it and put it back together again. The slide was not racked back, so the hammer was not racked back, obviously, and then the trigger wasn't reset. And so I'm pulling away on the trigger going, why isn't this working? And so instead of, testing to see if it would rack back, so didn't do that, and pulled it all apart, put it back together again, and it still wasn't doing it. And then I finally clued in. So, and then I could pull the trigger, so then it worked. So, but that was not included in the video. So, one of the things, so this is really awesome with the single action only trigger. I absolutely love it. But I did end up with some light primer strikes when I was out shooting yesterday, and there were a few things that I'm not used to shooting with this. Is that the safety needs to be on when you holster the gun, and so I was doing that, but then I had a brain fart, and one time I forgot to unclick the safety on my draw. That only happened once, but still it threw my time off significantly because I was sitting there going, why isn't this working? And then the other thing is, when I did end up with a light primer strike, obviously the slide is not going to cycle. And then I was left going, okay, now what? So I'm pulling the trigger like you would with a double action, single action, and nothing was happening. So then I clued in that you have to rack the slide back to reset the firearm. So anyways, a bit of a learning curve here. I will get through that, but the light spring is probably too light. This was tuned for the single action, double action Shadow 2, and I'm going to be swapping that out today for either a Cajun Gunworks 8.5. This spring in here is actually lighter than the 8.5 Cajun Gunworks, but it sets off all federal primers in the single action, double action, whereas the 8.5 does not. And then the other one I'm going to test is a 7-pound one from Ipswich store, and this one actually pulls a little bit heavier than 7 pound. So I'm going to see what that equates to in single action only. So I'm just going to do a bit of a test. If I have to, I have a 8-pound one of these and a 9-pound, and I think I have a 10 and an 11 as well too. So I'm just going to run that through. I'm going to take the grips and the magwell off. All right, so let's take a look at the differences between these pins or these springs here. So this is this was a 7-pound spring at one time, which I cut down to make the single action double action a sub 5¼ pound double action and a sub 1½ single action. So you can see that at least 4 coils had been cut off. And let's compare it to a Cajun Gunworks. So about the same. The there seems to be a bigger gap between the coils in the 8½ pound. Okay, so in goes the non-modified. Yeah, there's a lot more tension on that. Okay, so this is where my little trick comes in. And I find I'm actually talking again, sorry. So that just pops right in there. And then it popped right through the other side because there was a bit of a gap, but we just pushed that in and then push it level. Okay, so let's test that. One and 3/4. One and 3/4 approximately again. Two. So I'm going to try the Cajun Gunworks 8½ next. .6. Oh yeah, dummy. It's definitely taking some getting used to. .9. So I might end up just running that Cajun Gunworks in there and seeing if it, yeah, so that's a 1½ pound trigger. Oops, there goes my gunsmithing box. So I'm going to take it out to the range today and just throw, 50 rounds through each spring and see which one functions the best. The other thing I can do is take off 1 or 2 coils on the 7-pounder here, and see how that works. And just lighten it up slightly. I'll have a 19-ounce trigger instead of an 18. All right, so that's the story so far on the single action only. My tuned spring for the single action double action is too light. So a 1 and or 18-ounce trigger is too light for this gun. Now I do have a, here's the other thing. I have some trigger bar springs coming that are competition springs from Ipswich store, and what they do is they keep your trigger light, but you can run a heavier mainspring on or in the gun. So when I get those in, I will probably stick this one back in again. Or no, sorry, I'll put this one in, which is heavier than the Cajun Gunworks. So it should give reliable primer strikes, but it'll keep the trigger light. So that'll be interesting. That'll be a video that's going to be coming up here as soon as I get the parts in, probably be about a month. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the comments on my previous video and the gunsmithing tips. I really appreciate getting that information from more experienced gunsmiths. I'm not a gunsmith. I basically just tinker with the gun as a hobby, but I love learning, and the more information I get that I can apply, the better. So thank you very much, and keep that information coming. And stay tuned for the 1,000 subscriber giveaway. I'll be posting a video on that, notifying subscribers of what's going on with that and what you need to do to sign up for that. Okay, so one of the things that I forgot to mention now is function testing. So we know about the cock the hammer back and then do the bump test, and then flick the safety on and pull the trigger. Nothing. And then what was the other one? Oh yeah. And then pull the trigger, and the gun should not fire when doing that. So this is safe. And I'm going to put the grip panels back on now, and then take it out to the range and test fire that. And if I need to, I will put the heavier mainspring in there. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention is that I do have a competition hammer coming for this one here, and I already have the competition hammer for the single action double action, and those will be installed, and I'll be doing videos on that, and that's where I'll go back to my non-speaking role